Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. I'm your host, Michael Andre Ford in Texas, coming to us from Portugal, but usually New York City. Scott Clover, American, but intriguing, fun American, super intuitive. Been helping people for 7+ years. He's a podcast or show host as well. Super excited to have Scott on, and we both are connected via Emma Milden in New Zealand, who's a Simon & Schuster author and much more than that. So a big shout out to Emma for making this connection happen. Scott, welcome to Angels, Positivity, and Love.
Thanks, Michael. And yeah, thanks, Emma.
Hey, look, you've been doing this a while. You're super good at helping people sort their stuff out. We'll put it that way. I mean, stuff happens in life. Welcome to being human, ebbs and flows, and we get stuck. Um,
Sure.
Again, you've got a super defined practice. Can you just help the audience understand what you do? And then at some point, can you do your origin story?
Sure. So basically, I'm an intuitive energy healer, and my practice is designed around feeling better in your body somatically, which is what my background was in, somatics. And when I started doing the somatic work myself, my mentor asked me, how did my body feel? And for a lot of empathic children who may have gone through trauma, my body did not want to be felt. So, I was gruff and said, "Rah, rah, 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 why would I want to?" And years later, that question changed my life because it allowed me to clue into my body, which then that's where my intuition was being not just harbored, but also squandered. And so the more somatic works I did into getting in tune to my body, regulating my nervous system, feeling more safe, the more my intuition came out to the point that it became undeniable. So I was a child intuitive and then shut it down for many reasons because I was being considered weird. I knew too much stuff when I was young. And I made a conscious decision to shut it down. And it sort of cracked open later in life and came out with a vengeance. And once I got a handle on it, I realized sort of looking at myself and my archetypes is one of the things that I work on. I realized that I'm catered to healing. So I do what I am, is what I say, because I have certain skill sets that I'm able to see and sense energy patterns in and around people's bodies, in and around their timelines, their generational patterns, their family patterns, either their soul pattern. But generally, it's the human body that they're in that I deal with mostly. And I see patterns in and around their human body and how it got affected. So I will see more maybe an origin story where people can't see their origin story.
Mm.
And that's why you come to see someone like me, is because you can go to talk therapy and talk about a story, but you're not quite sure what happened because it was so long ago that you've told that story so many times that it's changed. So you're trying to solve a story that doesn't really relate to what the originating story was. So if I can help you sort through your subconscious and tell you what really happened at age 3, 4, or 7, then you can release it. But not knowing what the real story was, you're gonna have a harder time like flushing it out of your system. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. So you have really good
Yeah.
boundaries, but can you share with how you connect to the client? Is it somebody coming on online to book you, but you're already kind of tasting the air on them and you've gotten a little bit of a download? Or is it when you start interacting, it comes tumbling in right then and there? Or is it a mix?
It's somewhat of a mix in that if I hear a song that I'm really drawn to in the morning, or a reel or some healer talks about something, and that'll stick in my head in the morning. And then later in the afternoon, I'll have a client and I'll say, I just saw this thing this morning that caters to what you're dealing with. And either I send them the meme or I send them this or I explain it back to them. A lot of times it informs me, or the universe figures out a way to inform me of what that client might need in the afternoon. I hear something about it the day before or the morning before. Um, every once in a while, I'll clue in prior, but it generally is nice because when you call me or we do a session together, it really is your session in the moment,
Mm.
in what's happening with you, and in ways you can excavate things that are holding you back. Right. So I will clue in maybe a few minutes before the call, but it doesn't do me a lot of good to clue in weeks before. If they set the appointment 3 weeks in advance, it doesn't do me much good to clue in then. Mostly because they wouldn't, if they were sensitive, they
Mm.
might feel me, trying to sense with them. And that's not really the permission I've been given.
Mm.
I'm very big on boundaries and I'm very big on permission because that's how I learned to keep my abilities under control. I mean, living in Manhattan as a burgeoning psychic was, challenging at times trying to ride the subway or getting in an airplane because people at the airport are very agitated
Mm,
and it's hard to ground on a plane. So, things like that. I used to fly all the time when I was a kid. I was a big traveler, but and I still do. But those situations, you don't need to be intuitive. I don't need my energy system out to know what the woman 3 rows down in the plane is going through, right? That doesn't serve me at all, and that's exhausting. So a lot of my friends, when I first started to come out about this and tell them at dinner parties and stuff, like, this is what I do for work. And they're like, oh, are you reading my energy? And I know that that's like an automatic question. My response sounds kind of, like a jerk, but to be frank, no, I'm not. It doesn't interest me and it's fatiguing.
mm,
And why would I read someone's energy that didn't give me permission?
mm,
Right? A lot of times, if I'm helping someone with a client, they'll say, oh, can you read my ex-boyfriend? And if you try to read them and their back is turned to you, then no, you don't read that person's energy. I hold real strict boundaries.
mm,
And there's a lot of people, that are very fluid with those things and that works for them. That's just not how I work. And also I deal with a lot of celebrities.
mm,
New York City, some of my friendship circles, it spiraled out and I have several celebrity clients. So for them also, it's very necessary to hold a strong boundary because they're sensitive and they have every right to be sensitive because people don't know what boundaries are for people in the limelight, for example.
mm,
So boundaries are very important when dealing with energy work. Um, you don't want to bring in your issues into a client session.
mm,
So I can tell you when I sort of rediscovered my intuitive abilities, I worked 3, 4 years with mentors and healers and different people before I got anywhere near a client.
mm,
I didn't just take a weekend workshop and start my practice. Like I really strive to understand my intuition, understand its aperture, understand its trajectory, how it comes in, how I process it in my body, and why I process information from other people. Meaning, if I felt everything in my body the way some intuitives do, and I see this many clients a week, I would not live very long
mm,
because I deal with a lot of traumatic things that happen to people. I also deal with a lot of creative, fun things too. I help creatives expand their imagination and creativity and help executives find their inner child. That's really fun, but also that comes after the excavation, right? If I work with the long-term client, we have to excavate a lot of their stuff in their bodies and their energy fields and their patterns so they can feel more free. We are contracted as Americans, as human beings, wherever you live in the world, particularly if you're female, you don't grow up as yourself. You grow up as a version of what you think other people think of you. And that gets real old for people over time because you're living on the truth of someone else, and that can really take fatigue and toll on the body. So, one of the things in my practice that if you stick with me long enough, we're going to ultimately get to that authenticity. Are
mm,
you being yourself? If you're being yourself, then your energy is in alignment and you're congruent.
mm,
And if you're changing your behavior, your words, or your actions for a boss, for a partner, for a family member, and you may not even realize that you're doing it, you're going to feel a spiritual malaise
mm,
because you're not connecting to a truth. You're connecting to a bastardized version of what's assumed to be true by someone else.
mm,
So that's not your spirit. That's you catering your spirit or making your spirit malleable to others.
mm.
We all had to do it to survive, whatever your upbringing is. But the older you get in life and the more and more that we talk about these things, the less encumbered people become, right? So the
Like,
one thing I do, oh, go ahead.
oh no, no, I was going to say I like that.
Yeah. I will say in my practice, I'm non-dogmatic.
Mm,
So I was not raised with any sort of organized religion in my family and my life. And so when I came into this, I think of things from an energetic perspective. I see and sense energy patterns.
mm,
I don't apply dogma generally to those patterns. The one Venn diagram where that would hit is I do talk archetypes. And that is, once again, just a pattern that people have around them.
mm,
So you can call it whichever pattern you want, or if you want to change the dogma of archetypes, that's fine. But I speak energy.
mm,
And angels, for example, is the name of the show. Angels have an energy. And I also have angel archetype. I was born with angel archetype, I should say. So I communicate with that pattern or that communication source, I think, a little differently than some other people who hold them in a revered high regard. Whereas I believe that they're just part of a spiritual community, or an energetic, shall I say, community, that people dictate as spiritual. Whereas I don't use that term because I don't see it from a spiritual perspective. I see it from a pattern perspective.
Mm.
And angels to me are fifth dimensional beings that pop in and out, have a consciousness, and have a purpose.
Mm.
And if you engage with their consciousness and you respect them and you request help from them, they generally will rise to the occasion.
Mm.
And then you thank them, and then they go back to their dimension.
Mm.
And that's how I deal with sort of angelic energies. I don't call them by like a specific name, but I will call them from a purpose. So angel of light, angel of mercy, angel of, take your pick. And you can I add some sort of energy behind it to call the angel or the energy forth. I don't use, Tom, Rick, or Steve, or I don't name them by first names. I name them by efficacy, I would say.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah,
so from nobody, like talking about the somatic side, because you covered a lot of ground here. So from
yeah.
nobody to body is your practice.
I
I'm
don't.
doing a pun on the word body. From nobody,
Oh,
because people are out of their body, they're not paying attention, they're stressed out, they come to you, you
mhm.
help them get back into their body in a way, get grounded, get
Exactly. Yep.
re-centered and into an ability to do action with a lot less thinking and a lot more heart. I spent 22 years in New York City, so I hear you. And then final reaction on this is, can we get back to, it's not processing because that's up here, the rat race and everything. Can you just talk to us, share like second by second in a way, what's sometimes going through you? Are you seeing energy on people? Are you seeing it with your eyes shut? Are you feeling the colors or the flows and you know what they are, but it's more abstract, more like you say, the energy level? Can you do a way that you do a little blow by blow for us of the detail of just when you're
Sure.
transacting?
Well, I mean, if you're listening to this, and you can leave your eyes open or close your eyes, but imagine your high school house, the house you grew up in, and imagine the TV room, and point to the lamp in the TV room. Point to the lamp with your finger. Where's the lamp in the TV room? But you're opening your eyes and you're seeing me.
Mm.
You see the lamp in that room, right, in your head, but your eyes are open looking at me. I'm holding up two fingers. That's how I see information. It's like a second viewing screen in my head, like a memory, but it's not a memory because it's your energy information that I'm seeing. Does that make sense?
It does. It's the first time I've ever heard it described this way. So very interesting. But can you also cover the somatic side? Because that's,
Sure.
I don't know how to
So
just, I always
so
get hung
there's
up on
somatics.
terminology lingo, but
Yeah,
it's been
there's
around for a
somatics and
while.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's somatics in my work, and then there's intuition, and my work is a Venn diagram, a meeting of those two.
Yep.
Meaning I have very I have a Rolodex full of somatic exercises we can do to get people back in their bodies. My intuition leads me to which part of the body is coagulated, which part of the body was contracted, at what age it got contracted, what was the action behind the contraction. And that can be a narcissistic parent, that could be the neighbor boy touched you the wrong way, that could be you got bullied, it could be a car accident. For a lot of people our age, it's dental work that wasn't explained. They just strapped the child down, and the child woke up and part of their body was missing.
Mm.
That can be very traumatic for people if medical procedures aren't described to the child early in life. They just take for granted, and then their body doesn't understand. They wake up with a body part missing.
Mm.
So these the other things that bother people: moving schools when you're young.
Mm.
If you change schools in elementary school, middle school, or you lose your friendship circle and you have to restart it again, your parents take that for granted. Oh, dad got transferred, no big deal. Well, it's a huge deal to the human psyche. So a lot of times I'll say, what happened to you at the age of 11? Did you change schools? And the client's like, how did you know that? I went from my little neighborhood to this big school and no one knew me, and I just lost who I was, right? These stories happen. It can be anything. It can be a trauma, or it can be a life event.
Mm.
Either way, the body processes it similarly. If you felt contracted and felt like your power was taken away as a kid, that leaves a mark or a dent. It's my job, or a kinked hose, let's call it. It's my job when you call me or ask for a meeting for me to find your kinked hoses and to unkink them and let the chi flow back to the story, to the body part, to the energy field, the auric field, depending on where we're finding the void or the contractive energy. Sometimes energy is missing, sometimes energy is knotted up too tight, and it can be one or the other, or sometimes both. And it's sort of, I sense that double sight, that we were talking about. Sometimes I do feel it in my body. And as I said, for younger practitioners or new practitioners, that's not the safest way to do energy work. It still happens to me after all these years. I've been in this, you said, I've been in this over a decade now. And sometimes I still feel it in my body and I'll be like, oh, push it back. And so I like to present the client as a hologram. And then I divide that hologram into 4 quadrants, because then it's easier for me to focus on just one quadrant of the body than it is the whole body. And each quadrant tells a story. So if you break your body down halfway, right to left, you've got receiving energy on the left and sending out energy on the right. That's the feminine and the masculine. And if you divide the body front to back, you've got front energy being yours and back energy being other people's. So if I sense a coagulated energy in your back left quadrant, for example, I'm going to know that you've got mom issues or grandma issues. If there's a stagnant or a dullness or even a stench in your back right, that means that you didn't have a very good relationship with your father, or there was some hindrance, right? If your front right is coagulated, or I find some energy in there, that generally speaking means that you have a issue putting yourself out in the world. And if it's in your front left, then you generally have an issue receiving. And a lot of times when we start with a client to break their body down into quadrants, they can only focus on that one quadrant and they get a lot of insight. It's like trying to swallow an apple all at once. No, you swallow an apple bite by bite, right? So if I say, look at just the front left quadrant of your 3rd chakra, you can tune out everything else and just focus on what that specific issue might be. Now, you break that quadrant, which tells me something, into a chakra, then that tells me another layer of information. And is it on the top of the chakra, or is it on the bottom of the chakra? Give an example, the 3rd chakra. If it's up towards the heart, that means you got an issue with, putting yourself out there lovingly or into the world. And if it's the 3rd chakra on the bottom, that means your sense of self is struggling to power yourself, right? So it really is looking at the body for me as a blueprint, as a hologram, and then I can break each quadrant down into a segment, and each segment down into a piece, and then go down to the Lego, and then go down to the atom, and find, specifically where that fork is turning the wrong way and turn it the other way to create a change over time. And that generally comes with them doing the process. My clients call me the energetic plumber, because I see and sense where the energy is coagulated, and then I will help them through somatic exercises release it themselves. I prefer being a healer that's a guide. I consider myself a librarian. So you show up into a library with 60,000 books. I will guide you to the stack and the book, and I will open the book. I will not read the book to you. You do the reading, you extrapolate the information. Because when you go to a healer and they heal you, they have healed you. If you go to a healer and they inspire you to heal yourself, it's probably going to last longer. And your subconscious knows that it was real, right? You have a lot more faith when you feel it in your own body than somebody saying, oh, okay, I fixed you. Well, I don't know that because I didn't feel it in my own body. But if I can have an intuitive person clean out their spleen chakra and literally feel like sludge coming out of their spleen, like old motor oil, that they feel that intrinsically. I'm not telling them that. I'm guiding them to do it. And when they do it, they say something very similar. If you're an intuitive, your spleen is generally clogged up because that's one of the intuitive antennas that we have in our bodies. The same way if I see a client and I'll say, oh, which one of your parents was a drinker? Well, how did you know that? Well, because I can see it in their liver. I'm not an alcoholic. I know you're not, but one of your parents was. How did you know that? Because I see it in your liver. There's some vibration in the liver that tells me that one of the family members was an alcoholic, not the person, but a family member. That's just an example.
Fascinating. I love this. Talk to us a little bit about your own origin story. Now, you're a very private person. You've got great boundaries, but there's got to be a sanitized, publicly approved version of your origin story. What helped you do this path?
Uh, as I said, as a child, I had issues with my intuition in that it was so pronounced that there were no words for it in the 70s. No one understood how or why I could know things that I knew. And I wasn't the only, there's kids in all, all ages now that do this. But in my case, I was told that I was either lying or fibbing or a snoop because I knew things that I wasn't supposed to know, and I knew where things were that I didn't. There was no rhyme or reason why I knew that the knitting needle fell behind the cabinet, for example. So then it looked like I put it back there just to hide it. No, it fell back there and I sensed where it was. So I told my mom. These are examples that adults didn't make any sense. I used to drive my teachers crazy because I knew stuff they didn't know. And so they thought I was a smartass. And I wasn't that, and I wasn't smarter than them. It's just I saw things that they weren't seeing. So you go over to someone's house too many times and you start telling them about their parents' relationship, for example, they start to think you're a little weird at 11 or 12. Like, are your parents getting divorced? And they're like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, to me, it just seemed so obvious how much they hated each other, right? But that was just the pattern in the household. I see it like it was written on their faces, but I wasn't realizing that other people weren't seeing it that way. So you do that enough times and you're going to start to be looked at as weird. And when you do that around 11 or 12, like I did, the last thing I wanted to be perceived of was weird because I knew there was something inside of me that was already different. Right. So I didn't want to be doubly different. So I remember I was walking down the hall and I said in my middle school, whatever that is that's making me weird, that's not letting me being invited over to my friend's house anymore, that needs to stop. And it stopped. I told it to shut down and it did. Now, over the years, you put something in a Pandora's box and wrap it in change and throw it to the bottom of the ocean, it's going to burp open, right? And get you in trouble in many, many ways. Because there were things in my past, in my life. I was in the Peace Corps, for example, and I just knew stuff. I knew stuff about my other volunteers. I knew stuff about where I lived in Africa. And I just knew things that I wasn't supposed to know. And I didn't have words for it. The personal story that you said I'm very private, and I am quite private or boundaried, but the personal story is that it wasn't accepted in my family. My grandfather was very intuitive. My dad had it, and I get it from the males in my family. Now, my grandfather had me when no, he was old when I was a kid, right? So he was an older man just when I was a baby. And he drank every single day from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to sleep. He had a whiskey and water by his bed, and he drank it when he woke up, and he drank it till the moment he went to sleep. That's all I ever saw of the man. And apparently he did that since my dad was a child. Then in my high school, we went on a trip with my father, and he had a panic attack on a plane, and everyone thought it was a heart attack. So we thought my dad was going to die. We go to the hospital. Turns out it was a panic attack because my father was picking up too much information in the plane, and he was excitable because we were traveling and going to Disney World and da 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 da. And my dad was taking like nerve pills back in the 80s. Like it was almost unheard of back then to take those kind of calming, whatever they're called. And I think working with other intuitives that I've worked with, both of them were highly intuitive the way I was. There was just no words or placement for it in a male society. So the way my grandfather stopped the voices, if you will, was drank himself into a stupor from the minute he woke up. For my father, he had to take pills to shut it down, his empathy. Like that's what those pills do. Even Tylenol, even Advil, those shut down our empathy. So I think I don't like this term, the black sheep. I'd much prefer like the white Pegasus or the unicorn or something. But I was definitely the white sheep in my family because I wasn't going to put up with that anymore. I wasn't going to placate myself or medicate myself in a way that wasn't going to make this intuition useful to me. I've seen too many lives in my family ruined because they weren't accepting it. And I decided when it came back to me in my 30s, I wasn't going to put it back in a box, because it's for intuitive people like me and others out there, it's too much. The cacophony can be deafening. And if you don't get a handle on it, it's going to drive you off and into things that you may not normally do, like drink or take these pills to make it stop, because there were no words for it. You weren't expressing it. And I said to myself, I'm going to stop the pattern in my family. Was that accepted by them? No, not really. My dad used to say before he died, "Oh, you still being a psycho?" Instead of a psychic healer, he was like, "You still doing that psycho thing?" Like, really supportive, right? Like, this is where I came from. And so knowing that, I know the struggle that when my client says, "I'm so nervous. I've read your website and I've listened to every podcast, and I finally got up the gumption to call you, and I'm just so nervous." And I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, don't be nervous. You found somebody like you.
Mm,
You know, you found a flock, or you found a tribe, or you found somebody who's going to see you and not judge you." Like, the one thing I'm big on and I say often is joy and judgment cannot live in the same moment.
mm,
So when you come and see me to be seen, I am not going to judge what I see. I'm just going to explain it back to you as non-judgmentally as possible. And I'm going to keep the curiosity up to say, why is it like that? Let's change it if it doesn't serve you. Not, "I can't believe you're like that," and demean or shame somebody. That puts them back in the same pattern that created it.
mm,
So when you come to see me or some of my colleagues, we show up with a level of curiosity that eschews judgment. And once you eschew the judgment, then joy and other livable life forces can come into the moment.
mm,
And for a lot of people, that doesn't happen very often. Because if you go to a talk therapist and you're telling them your story over and over again, you might feel judged.
mm,
And you might even change the story to placate that you don't feel judged and say, "Oh, I didn't do this really, but I just don't know how I feel about this." And so don't lie to your therapist.
mm,
Don't lie to your therapist. And if you're lying to your therapist, stop going, right? I'm not a preacher, but it makes no sense. And so when you come to see an intuitive, someone got mad at me at another podcast for this online and said, "I can't believe you said this," but I'm going to be real honest. I don't need the story to help heal you,
mm,
because the story you're telling me is the story you've told yourself to placate you. That story does not interest me. What interests me is the true story, to let you let go of it, right? That's not me being a jerk. That's me saying energy is energy, and you combat energy, or you meet energy where it is. You don't wish it to be different. You don't want it to be different. It's going to stay wished and wanted.
mm.
What you do is you acknowledge it and you accept it for what it is. You see it for what it is. Then the pattern can change. Does that make sense?
Totally. Scott, I like it. It'd be funny if everybody had to write their life story down. Some of us might take a few weeks with a lot of paragraphs. A lot of this happened to me. A lot of that happened to me. But if you got given the assignment to rewrite it, like once a day, it could be a couple of years before you've even gotten it down to 2 pages a page. Very few people
Yeah.
are going to get straight to "I am love" and just be like, "Assignment done, drop the mic." Hey, I wanted to ask big picture question stuff about like either
Sure.
compassion, ego, awareness, allowing, stuff like that, kindness, gentleness, maybe more consciousness for mankind. But before we go big picture, so remind me that's where we're headed next. I wanted to get into one last nitty gritty, and that's the whole aura thing. Have you accidentally seen auras? You're seeing auras all the time. No, I'm feeling the auras, as some people do, and they've got a definition. They know they're feeling orange. They're not seeing orange. They only see it with their eyes closed. There's a million different varieties. Which way do you describe energy flows? Do you use the color concept, the chakras, whatever you want to describe it? Can you give us just a tad more, or flush out that detail for us?
Sure. So going back to that visual of the TV room where the lamp is,
Yeah.
that's how I see stuff in my head, but I see it in black and white.
Okay.
When I had my mentor later in life, when I decided I wanted to do this for a profession, and she said, "Okay, we live in Manhattan. Do you want to see colors?" And I said, "Oh God, no." If I saw everyone's aura color and swirling, I would, wouldn't want to go on the train. It was like doing LSD, right?
Make it
So
stop.
I said, "Please, no colors." And I still don't see colors in my head. I can distinguish cyan from another color, blue from green, yellow from orange. I can do that, but I see it on a black and white palette, because if not, it would be too much information for me to see. So I don't see colors, but I'm giving a thumbs up. I don't see colors, but I do sense colors, and I help the client sense the colors, but they generally see the colors in their own mind and describe them back to me.
Hmm.
Um, I don't prescribe so much to the 7 chakra system, as I've worked with, generally work with the 12, and then from there I can go up into the hundreds, but that's very rare that a client would be adept at that. So we keep it to the 7 if they understand that concept. I go to 12 if we're talking about archetypes, past lives, things like that. Um, I see chakras in and outside the body. But the interesting work that I do with the auric layers that you're talking about, I don't sense the auric layer as one thing. I see each layer, and Cindy Dale has a great book on this called The Subtle Body. If anybody doesn't know Cindy Dale, she is a prolific writer and one of my favorite intuitive people to clue in with. She has a book, if you're interested, called The Subtle Body. And she describes the auric layers as they come off the body, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and she goes up to 12, I think. If you want to go into this a little deeper, I see the auric field and the chakras as being intrinsically linked. They're the same system. Think of going to a cinema. Okay. A cinema is a projector with a light bulb projecting light onto a screen. I see the chakras as the projector in the movie theater, and I see the auric layers as the screen.
Hmm.
If the screen wasn't there, the auric energy or the chakra energy would just go off into space and not connect anything. It would just dissolve, right? So the chakra energy needs something to be projected upon.
Hmm.
So I see the auric layers as the screen and the chakras as the projector. Sometimes the projector gets dirty, and that would mean the what the image is on the screen is dirty. And sometimes people throw popcorn at the screen and sodas, and so the screen is dirty. Sometimes the auric layer gets dented and confused, and sometimes it's an intrinsic thing. That's the allowance. So outside the body is permission, inside the body is allowing.
Hmm. Interesting.
Okay. Permission comes from conditioned thinking in other people.
Yep.
Allowing comes from, am I allowing myself to do that act or not act? Do I dance in public or do I not dance in public? Society doesn't dictate that. We're not footloose, right? So society doesn't dictate whether you dance in public, you do. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
So back to the chakras. I see the chakras as sort of the projectors of light, and then the auric layers as the screen. What I'll do, if this is a visual, if it's a podcast, but what I'll have the client do is put their hands on their chest or on their belly. And as they're putting their hand on their belly, they move very slowly, very incrementally out. And they will act, yeah, exactly, away from their body. And they will feel, ooh, that one feels electric, or that one feels gooey, or that one feels dead or void, or that one feels really kinetic and spiky. And as we comb through those, each layer tells a different story of what was projected onto them as a child and which layer they won't let stop protecting them. Does that make sense?
Totally.
There's
For
some cultures that you can get, real close to somebody. When I was in West Africa, you would sit right next to somebody and touch them, and it would be no problem at all.
Hmm.
Whereas an American, you stay, 14 inches away from their face, or else they feel like they're being encroached upon.
Hmm.
So if you don't feel comfortable in your auric field, for example, you're going to feel somebody get close to you and you're going to not feel comfortable with that. And that's because something in your body or your chakra was confined at a young age or some age that doesn't allow you the transference or the reciprocity of the energy through the auric fields. But yeah, one of the most interesting things that I do with clients is comb them through their auric fields or let them experience their own auric fields. Because most people don't take the time to be calm enough to notice that their outside energy is pixelated.
Hmm.
And sometimes people feel they put themselves in a cage or a shell. Well, shells are great to keep stuff out, but that also unfortunately keeps stuff in. So if your shell doesn't have any reciprocity and you can't get a partner, a girlfriend, or a boyfriend, well, that's because you're not letting that permeability through, that transference, that reciprocity. But
Okay.
auric fields, yes, they exist. But for me, they exist in layers of like almost 12 to 15 of them, not just one. Oh, your aura is green. It's not a mood ring to me.
Hmm.
It's a nuanced system that actually tells a bigger story.
Okay, before we get to the biggest picture, the eternal questions for mankind, stuff like that, You as a healer on your own personal path, everything is growth and expansion. Even if you had 19 New York Times bestsellers, you're booked for 35 years, like maybe, or 30 years, like Tyler Henry, the Hollywood medium. At some point, there's still like growth and expansion happening. And up here, we want to do the best we can to like, whoa, like things are going okay over here. We don't need to grow and expand. Do you mind sharing where the rub has been for you, or where you're like, I've always been interested in this particular type of intuitiveness healing, some, what do we call it, modality, or some part of you that you just haven't had time to get to yet? How have you been facing a little bit of the rub or further expansion and growth? Or you're like, I don't mind using my hands and I'm actually doing hands-on healing through the screen for clients. I'm making it up. Can you
Sure.
explain the dynamics? It can't have been 10 years now of absolutely the same thing the whole time, or has it been? And then what's been percolating around that you are, more open to now?
Okay. So a couple things. I started face to face in New York, person one on one. And then with COVID, I went to the phone and I realized I can do this over the phone and it works. The efficacy is just as important or just as good as in person. And then also people are in the comfort of their home, so they're not traveling before and after, and they can stay somatically calm.
Mm.
Or they can go outside in their yard and touch a tree or take their shoes off. They can't do that when they leave my maybe Washington Square Park, but um, so I do like the phone work because of that and their personal experience. And most of the time, people go, "Shouldn't we Zoom?" And they would say, "No, because your eyes are closed and I don't need to see you." Um, because your physical form is not what I'm looking at. That doesn't interest me so much. Or your hair color doesn't interest me. What interests me is the patterns inside of your body or outside your body. That's one thing. What I have noticed of late is there's more. I know it's the year of the dragon, but a lot of my clients and a lot of people I'm associated with are feeling more sort of dragon energy. And I'm not even sure what that means because I don't have a dogmatic view of dragons, or I didn't watch the HBO show. So I'm not even sure what dragons are. I know that they're similar to some degree to angels. They just have more attitude, like they're three-dimensional or they're multi-dimensional, excuse me. They just have a lot more attitude, I think, than angels and the benevolence of an angel. I think dragons have more of a purpose. And I think that's presenting here in the year of the dragon for a reason, because those of us who thought we probably have a purpose, that's coming to the surface. If you look at what's happening around the world, and I'm sort of an international citizen at this point, it's happening all over the place. This dichotomy, this binary, me against you. My ideology doesn't serve your ideology, so we must dislike each other. That's just a story. That's created by something bigger than all of us, and we can take our own personal view of it or not. But if you internalize all that garbage, then that's what you're going to put out in the world. But if you say to yourself, I'm going to look beyond the binary and I'm going to say what feels better to my soul, or what I'm congruent with when I speak, and I can live with it, then you're going to feel better the next day when you wake up.
I
Does that
love
make
this.
sense?
Totally. I'm going to read a passage from a book written by angels. You'd have to take that with a grain of salt, though. But it should be very, not neutral, but fluffy or easy. Unconditional love and the word compassion would probably be the hardest language I'm about to read for 30 seconds. I want to get your reaction to it because it's going to lead us to what you were already touching on. The big picture for mankind. Is awareness on the horizon? Are you seeing more consciousness? But we're going to get to that in just a second.
Okay.
What's up with mankind? Why angels now? And this is, if you can imagine it as angels speaking, awareness for mankind is on the horizon. Call it a spiritual awakening if you wish. It's a chance for all to grow. Mankind's ready for more unconditional love and compassion for all. And more compassion by all for all is needed, as you just said. Mankind is ready for change from rat race mode. Happiness is obtained in the absence of ego. Ego is afraid to be vulnerable, to let go, to be in the unknown. Again, there's nothing to lose and nothing to gain. Move past seeing the negative. Last little bit. Compassion can be taught through one's own actions. How? Slowing down would do a world of wonder for most people. Doing it consistently is where the problems and opportunities lie. So stay present. Start right now. Letting go means less thinking. Do not get lost in perceived tasks, roles, ego, etc. Being in the moment is to do compassion for all. Can I get a reaction to that, or can you just take us into the big picture
No, I mean, reaction, and once again, staples of my work. Accept the existing reality.
Mm.
And I have a podcast about this. Detachment is connection. Now that seems oxymoronic, but it's not.
Can we plug your podcast real quick? It's Intuitive Energy Podcast, right?
Yep, the Intuitive Energy podcast on most platforms. I talk about intuition and healing and things that I would have liked to have understood about my practice and things I do 15 years ago that I couldn't find. I try to put it all in one place so people can listen and get some insights and spark how they're intuitive. You know, my goal is not to be teach people to be intuitive like I am. That's not going to do anybody any good. My mandala is mine and not yours, meaning you have your own mandala and it's just as beautiful as mine. But if you shine your soul light through my mandala, it's not going to be congruent with yours. So be as intuitive as you are. Like, I really enjoy working with intuitives and helping them find their trajectory and pinging it into their pituitary gland and things like that. But I would never ask a client to be psychic like me because that's just defeative and frankly, it's a disservice to the community. So if I can inspire someone to find how they're intuitive and embellish that and embolden that with them, that means I spend a day doing good things. But to dictate, there's people out there, unfortunately, that write books and say, this is how you have to be psychic because this is the way I am psychic. That really makes a disservice because then people judge themselves and think, oh shit, I didn't do it well enough. I'm not a good intuitive because I didn't do it the way this person that wrote this book did it. Well, that really is defeatist and energy and not supportive of a community mindset. So I'm a big believer that my mentor taught me healing in community. I like teaching classes. I teach classes called Coming Out Intuitive. I have a brand, a trademark called Coming Out Intuitive, which is about self-acceptance, not how to be a better psychic. It's how to self-accept that you are psychic.
Hmm.
If you can say out loud in a dinner party, I'm an intuitive, that's very rare. I had trouble doing it. You know, I for the first couple of years of my practice, I didn't even tell my friends or my family what I was doing for work. And then I thought, what the heck is wrong with, like, there's something up with that. That's not right. That's not how we're going to get to the evolution of intuition, which is one of the episodes of my podcast. The first episode is Intuition is Our Evolution. Because I really feel that intuition is our evolution. But it takes people like me, who I was a business owner, I was on the board of directors of a community center, I was well respected in my community, and now I'm an intuitive energy healer. Like that, I'm not a witch. I don't have a coven. I'm not pulling in energies that don't serve people. There's nothing negative from my standpoint about what I do, but people are very negative and pejorative about that. Even my nomenclature. You know, I had to decide, do I put intuitive in my thing? Well, if not, what kind of I'm not a shrink, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not doing talk therapy. But what I am doing is helping people engage and feel congruent with their own intuition. And if I can help inspire people to be intuitive as they are, then I feel that is the next evolution. Because it's very difficult to be intuitive and incongruous because you're going to start to know better, which generally leads to authenticity in your actions, in your words, in your deeds. And that generally leads to losing your friends and your family because they've known you for the person you were when you were confined or you were being malleable to their needs, wants, and beliefs. The minute you stop doing that, you're going to offend people around you because they're used to either taking advantage of you or your empathy serving them. And when you realize your empathy should serve you and then others, not the other way around, that's a real mind mess for people. And the people around them can't handle it very well. And sometimes the people that are doing it don't handle doing it very well because they're new at it. It's like a baby learning to walk. You fumble around in the dark and hit your head. I know I did back in the day. But if you believe in yourself and understand and accept that you are intuitive and then act on that intuition, your life will change.
Okay, big picture. These are the eternal
Yeah.
questions people have sat over a cup of tea forever. Talk to us just about mankind, consciousness, awareness, love, gentleness, unconditional love. What are the words you like to use, and how do you view what's happening with mankind right now? You've kind of touched on it already, but if you could sum it up again.
Yes, and I'm not going to weasel out of the question, but I will let you know my perceptions, or what I limit them to, is generally roots to treetops.
Hmm.
Because my work is with clients in their physical bodies, I try to keep my intuition roots to treetops and the nature based, or what I would call like the Native American energies, the human body, the trees, the plants. If I go and talk to the Palladians, that takes a lot of energy for me, and I generally don't do that anymore. I maybe tried to do it, or leave my body, or remote view, and all those things that were fun back in the day. Because it's my job, I really try to keep my intuition blocked, or guided towards the roots to the treetops and the human body, and what's happening is in sort of the community in whole as a whole. But I can tell you my perceptions sometimes when I'm sleeping slip out of that. And a couple months ago, now probably about a year ago, whenever Chat GPT came online, or that AI started happening, I could actually sense the neurotransmitters of the globe were firing at an accelerated rate that had never happened in our history before. Because I
Mm,
was born in the 70s before computers.
mm,
So the synapses, you used to send a fax to India. Now you can send a movie in 25 seconds, a 4-hour movie you can send in a minute to another country.
mm,
Not only that, when ChatGPT came about, they started making more synapses and connecting more data points than ever before. And not on a small scale, on a trillions and trillions and trillions of data point scale. And I actually felt it happen.
mm,
I felt it feeling like there's a network, like a satellite connecting network, if you will, of energy. I could actually sense the data points being extrapolated and connected and viewed differently. And that accelerated us as human beings, because as above, so below.
mm,
If energy is being transferred on a trillions and trillions of pieces of energy that didn't happen even a year ago, what's happening to our brains that are part of that process? That is a Wi-Fi of the globe, right? So I tried to tell somebody at a dinner party this, one of my clients' husbands, and he was like, okay, guy, like, okay, I think I know what you're saying. But if you're energetically sensitive, like I am, you can sense those things. I turn my Wi-Fi off at night in my house so I don't have to feel it. And I can tell when we forget. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll be like, oh, the Wi-Fi's still on. And I'll get up and I'll turn the Wi-Fi off.
wow.
I can feel when I drive under like electric lines in a car. If you blindfolded me and said in the next 2 minutes we're going to drive under power lines, I could tell you when we drove under the power line. Yeah.
Like,
Or if I'm looking at a new house or looking on a property, I would say, where are the power lines? Because I don't want to live anywhere near those things. Mostly because I can sense it, right? On a subtle level. We as humans are sensing, whether you think you're psychic or not. Trillions of data points are happening exponentially. Every day it gets more and more and more, not worse, just different.
mm,
And it happens more and more and more. And I think our brains and our intuitive levels are somehow aligning with that, because a lot of us are feeling more than we ever felt before. And if you add to that the eclipse from a few months ago and the solar flares that came after that,
mm,
that was I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything else, but there was more sun radiation on our planet than in 25 or 30 years.
mm.
So those solar flares barraged us after the eclipse, to the point that I was in bed for like 1 or 2 days, and I took the weekend off. I haven't taken a weekend off from work and I can't remember how long.
Wait, you didn't turn into a marathon runner?
I didn't turn it. I stayed in bed and went, what is happening? Oh my God. And what it is was we were just processing more radiation.
Mm,
But it's not bad radiation. It's the life force. It's the sun's energy that supports all living matter. We just had it heightened for a couple weeks. It peaked. And I think that changed us a little bit. I think it burned off some of our old stories.
mm.
I think it burned away some of the childhood shit that we clamored onto and allowed breaking away. Because I see my clients breaking out of old patterns um, in a way that wasn't really plausible before.
Well, speaking of sensing, we've reached that point in the show where I'm going to blow a little bit of sage from Texas to Portugal. If folks have
Okay.
already watched the show before, they know what's in store. Some people who are highly empathetic or intuitive or whatever you call it, energy sensitive, might start tasting it when you see the light lighting the sage.
Can
But
I
give
just ask, is that a turkey feather or is that
a red-tailed hawk feather.
Red-tailed hawk. Thank you. I just wanted to know the difference.
I got
Yeah.
it on a trail. I used to do a lot of trail running in Austin, Texas, and
Nice.
if we allow for Native American chiefs to exist, I was gifted a feather from one of them. Okay, so I'm going to light the sage. Give yourself permission to let go. However you roll at home, even if it's 2030 or in Germany or New Zealand, it's okay. Time and space isn't exactly what
Wait, can I interject something before?
Please.
Keeping in line with the theme, do you want to have the people listening to ask an angel their pick? Angel of light, angel of clarity, angel of beingness, angel of
Yeah,
self.
they can do angel of
Pick a
healing,
name of an
angel
angel,
of help,
say it out loud. Say it out
angel of
loud to the angel.
smelling, angel of olfactory assistance. But ask angels, the universe, unconditional love figures, your ancestors, your whole cheerleading squad to kick it into gear. And let me just get that, going. And one quick dad joke for everybody. I'll do the Santa's reindeer one, even if you just heard it before the show. Blitz and Dancer, just those two. Why do they drink so much coffee? Because they're Santa's Starbucks. Hey, everybody likes, well, almost everybody likes a dad joke. Catch some sage, catch whatever you want. If you're absolutely going crazy with this, ask for some flowers and some ocean smell, and you make it up. As Scott's been saying the whole show, you've got to do it your way, and you got to own what you got. Okay, Scott, what are you getting in Portugal right now?
I'm getting that I want to remind people of sensing their own clarity. And one way to do that is to have the ability to shut down your intuition. Don't block it out completely because that causes issues. But you can, before you go to sleep, if you can see this, close the barn door over your head and not have the cacophony of energy that comes at people. Just because you can pick up energy does not mean you should. Just because you are empathic doesn't mean you have to be overly empathic. You have a choice. What I say to all my new clients is, I have dominion over my own energies. And so if you pick up too much, close down the receptor for a minute or a week or a month and get your body to process the energy and then open up the aperture again. The goal is not to shut it off completely and block it because it will barrage you, but it's to block it, feel comfortable in yourself, open it back up in small ways to let it flow through you. And then over time, like me, open it up when you need it, close it down when you don't. Make a life with it. It doesn't have to be a chore. It can dance with you through life. It doesn't have to be like a struggling partner or a chain you have to drag around. Intuition not just informs us, but it can help us be who we are. But that doesn't mean you have to feel everything. And my analogy is when I first came back out, it was like walking into a sports bar with 19 televisions on. Well, just decide that 8 of those TVs get shut down and then ignore the ones that don't matter to you. But if you are overly empathic and you're picking up too much, close the barn door down for the night. See if you get a better night's sleep. And then talk to it and say, okay, I'm going to open up a little bit. Because if you close it down over time, it will cause physical issues. So that's not what I'm advocating. What I'm advocating is close it down so you get a handle on it and then open back up to it incrementally. Then you can gauge it and let it serve you as opposed to bowl you over or you being taken advantage of it. Does that make sense?
Totally. Scott, last little bit here. We're going to go big.
Sure.
Again, compassion, the kindness of, the concept of people showing kindness to themselves, others. I'm going to do 3 or 4 random definitions of compassion. I think there's like trillions of definitions. Okay. Compassion is releasing fears and judgments. Compassion is open eyes and open heart. Compassion is treating every moment with the awareness of a newborn baby. And what else for compassion? Trust all with kindness and love. Can you either react to that, add your own definition of compassion, just talk to us about compassion, or talk to us about how this is all some version of love?
Yes. I would say, once again, detachment is connection. So the more you detach from people or things that don't serve you, the more you can attach or connect to yourself. And once you get a handle on that, then your cup can spill it over and you can give your goodness out again. But if you were taken advantage of over your lifetime because of your empathy, because of a narcissist, because of whatever, I'm not saying be selfish or be an asshole. What I'm saying is Detach from those that don't serve you, find out who you are, and then you can start giving your energy to those who deserve it or you want to commune it with. Not because you were born into that family or because it was expected of you or your job or your boss or whatever it is. Start detaching from those things that aren't serving you energetically. That leaves you more energy to yourself. Your compassion is with you,
Mm.
right? If you forgive yourself for not fixing your parents as a child, which is a big one for people, children cannot fix family dynamics. Remind your inner child that over and over and over again. You didn't fail. Your parents just weren't capable.
Mm.
So forgive yourself, forgive your child for not fixing something they couldn't. And then self-love comes in, compassion, internal forgiveness and curiosity does eschew that judgment and lets you frame how you got here differently.
Mm.
And if you say, I overgave as a child because it was expected of me and I failed, meaning my parents still got divorced, you had nothing to do with your parents' divorce. But you don't understand that at the age of 6, oh, maybe I did something wrong and mom and dad are fighting over me, or I spent too much money because I had to buy a new school outfit. Well, that's not your fault that your dad lost his job and you needed a new school outfit, but we take it personally as kids, and then those patterns create older in us in older life or later in life, and then you end up marrying that person or you end up in a relationship with that person, and that's not a self-serving relationship. That's a serve the other person relationship. So the compassion that you're talking about is a really bring it home. Take your binoculars that you've given away to other people to judge you and bring them back to yourself and look at yourself and say,
Mm.
I'm going to love that person.
Okay, lightning round, like in a game show. Real quick
Okay.
answers, real quick questions. If you could just pick one episode only of your show, which episode should people start with? Or you can answer it two ways. Which one they should start with? It could be episode number one, but which other episode would you want to highlight?
The one that's the least viewed, the least listened to episode is Joy versus Judgment.
Ooh.
It's and that's the one that has, I mean, the other has hundreds and hundreds of views, and that one only has a couple hundred. It's so funny, or thousands of views, some of them. That one people stayed away from. And I understand why, because they don't want to confront it. But joy and judgment cannot live in the same moment. And if you were teased or judged as a child, you forgot how to tap into your joy.
Hmm.
And if you, as an adult, can once again forgive yourself or even forgive the people that bullied you and move on from it or move past it, which isn't easy, but it's possible, then your nervous system can re regulate and you can find that inner faith and stand up a little taller and your shoulders go back. And you look at life a little rosier just because you've relinquished something that's confined you for so long.
And sitting over there has been a quote this whole time from Eckhart Tolle, and we're about to get to the next lightning round question. Uh,
Okay.
Eckhart Tolle once said, ego implies unawareness. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. It's been said the way you said it. It's been said the way Wayne Dyer says it about a hot shower. It's awfully hard to take a wonderful hot shower and be upset at the same time. It's either or. What I wanted to get to is if
Can I
Cindy,
interject real quick?
yes, please.
Skipping. I told a client, a 59-year-old yesterday, he goes, "What can I do to bring back that inner child?" I said, "Skip. Go outside and skip." And he said, "Why are you telling me that?" I said, "Try and skip and not smile."
Mm.
It's almost impossible to skip through a grassy knoll or, a clover-filled grassy pasture and not smile. It's like
I love
hula
that.
hooping and not smile, but people don't have hula hoops. So if you can find a flat ground at our age and skip 5 to 7 paces and notice what happens just here,
Mm.
then bring that into your body and put that happens here down into your pelvis, and then go out to dinner and see what life is like.
I always say supermarket aisle, vegetables or fruits, and it's like an acting class. If you could do the chubby checker or Elvis, swing those hips with some emotion, and if everybody starts laughing and shaking their heads, you did it, but you'll find an incredible reaction within. Now, the question is, if Cindy Tail doesn't exist, not that you don't exist, but who else in the whole landscape of holistic healers, Alan Watts, who else, like one or two authors out there, would you want to get stuck with? You got one, two, or three of their books while you're on a 1 month vacation. By the way, that's the next question. Which island would you want to hold a retreat on? 2 weeks of people, 2 weeks of no people. You're solo, it's electricity, you're comfort, you're in a comfort.
Okay, so those are different questions.
Yeah, different questions. Which
My
author?
first would be Carolyn Mace, Carolyn
Ooh,
Miss, MYSS, who I call the crotchety godmother of energy medicine. I would listen to her audiobooks because she's very expressive, but she's very no nonsense.
hmm,
I don't clue into a lot of her dogmatic stuff. She had a religious background for so long, and she speaks a lot of from the religion side. And I took that with a grain of salt because that's how she was informed. And then all of a sudden, if you go back to videos she came out with a year or two ago, she sort of debunked all that because we have aliens now. And she
hmm.
goes, I can't remember the powers of myth or these. It's like a series of 9 videos, and the third or
Yeah.
fourth one, she just goes in and says, religions were great to get us to this point, but now that we have interdimensional beings and we have aliens,
Hmm,
she said, do they have Christmas on Galaxor? Do they even have December? She says.
hmm,
And, she's just got such a frankness about her that I appreciate. It's like she's Dutch. She's so frank.
hmm,
I really appreciate Carolyn and I like listening to her. Reading her, not so much. I like hearing her vibration of her voice because she's so resonant.
hmm,
Um, who else? From an energy standpoint, I think the book Genie in Your Genes by Dawson Church,
hmm,
Genie in Your Genes, is a fantastic description of what happens to the human body in the setting of an inattention.
hmm.
It's a little Dr. Joe and a little of that other guy, I can't remember his name, but Dawson Church's book really spoke to me years ago when I first came out. And the other book that I tell a lot of people to listen to, the audio book particularly, is Conversations with God by Neil Warren, somebody.
Neil Donald Walsh. Yep.
Neil Donald Walsh. But please try to find the audio version that has Ed Asner and Ellen Burstyn as God, because they both read the God part and they toggle back and forth because God has no gender in the book. So Ellen reads like 3 pages and then it switches to Ed Asner reading 3 pages, and they use the same pentameter in their vocal speech. It is such a great way to do your dishes or go for a walk or something and listen to those two talk about not godlike things. They speak about energy. The nomenclature there, the God part throws people off,
Hmm,
but it really is conversations about earthly energies. And it's what, 30 some years old by now, but I still get such a kick listening to those two, the resonance of their voices. Which leads me to one more little nugget. If you are setting an intention or if you are trying to communicate with angels, say it out loud. They like to hear the vibration. The angel will hear you. Don't just think, you didn't hear what I just said. I just thought it, right? But if you say, Angel of Clarity, come down while I'm sleeping and help me work out this thing, or Angel of Light, come down, or Angel of Healing, come down and help my spleen or my liver, and you say it out loud, the vibration of the planet is going to hear it better than just thinking it. The same goes for spell casting or intention setting. Say it out loud. Say it in your car. Say it in your bathroom. Say it anywhere. Say it around people. Say it silently, like to yourself. But say it out loud. Let the vibration resonate, and then the universe will sort of bend easier towards you than just thinking a spell or trying to cast something by thought.
Now, I know
Sorry.
you're a big one-on-one, doing your work even by phone. But let's say you're fully funded. Even the place that's going to host you somewhere around the globe is just, they've said, hey, we're donating 2 weeks of rooms, food,
Yeah.
everything, and assistance as well to help you. Where would you want to hold a 2 week retreat? But afterwards, you have to do 2 weeks by yourself just to just have fun, relax, and do whatever.
Oh, well,
What?
I've been there often. Costa Rica.
Okay, Costa Rica, east, west, which part?
Um, Probably by the volcano is where I would do the workshop, just because you would have that energy there, that grounding energy, and also the near the volcano would probably be cool to have a workshop. Um, Costa Rica, they don't have a military. They're so eco-friendly. They are tourist friendly. So if I was having a workshop, the people that arrive won't have some of those like third world issues. I used to own a travel agency back when there were travel agencies.
Okay.
And Costa Rica was a really easy sell, A, because I liked it, but B, it's just so conducive
Hmm.
to nature, to conservation, to eco, to tourism. It's just an easy place to go and visit and feel connected.
Yes, and so this is the quickest of the quickest questions, and then we're going to have a serious, get back to being serious, um, wrap up by you in any direction you want to take us. But this is a quick one. Do you hear different Hollywood actors that you look like?
I used to here I looked like Russell Crowe.
Okay. Ooh.
We had the same Caesar haircut once, and a French waiter in New York mistook me for him, and I got really special treatment. But no, I don't act like Russell Crowe. I don't have the temperament of Russell Crowe. I sing better than Russell Crowe. So no, we looked like each other. Back when I was like in my 20s, I think I got Robert Downey Jr. Once again, we had the same hair color, and I didn't have a beard.
Mm.
But no, I don't get a lot of actors or I do get, you have a doppelganger. I get that a lot. I met somebody out the other night that looks just like you. I do get you have a doppelganger, but rarely am I mistaken for someone famous. Yeah.
Okay, where do you want to take us for the closing out of the episode here? Scott Clover coming to us at scottclover.com. All the details will be below the video. And while you're listening, please subscribe, like, share, comment. What has resonated? What have you enjoyed? Even put 2, 3 words in there. I like Scott. That works great. But you can do a little more than that. Okay, Scott, where are you taking?
Yeah, and I'll read the comments too. If you have like intuitive energy questions, I'll read the comments and then put them into one of my podcasts or something.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I would do that too. What a food for thought? Is that what you're asking? A nugget
What's
of
a final
wisdom, if you
reminder
will?
for us all? We're at the cocktail party, but now it's closing out.
To keep it real simple, take your shoes off. Those rubber soles are not doing us any good. Either buy a grounding mat that you can sleep on or put by your computer, but get outside, put your hands on a tree, get your feet on solid ground, on dirt, on grass. It helps your electrical system, your endocrine system. It helps your intuitive energy. It helps your psychicness. There's really no better remedy for what's ailing us lately than grounding. And if you live in an area that's temperate enough to go outside, even if it's cold out, you can still put your hands on a tree. And that is a grounding. I do, when I walk now, I walk down some paths that are light. And if I'm wearing shoes, I will actually grab the tree and like not swing, but like touch from tree to tree, sort of like a grounded Tarzan, if you will. Not only am I getting a little bit of more exercise, but I'm also, each time I touch that tree, I know that I'm grounding to the ground. So, yeah, nature is our friend. It's not something that we are disconnected from as much as they will tell us that we are. And filter your water. That's another thing I would say. Try not, if you want to be more intuitive, or if you want to clue into your intuition, try to stay away from fluoride and try and stay away from certain pesticides and things that really scramble who we are. If I get into an Uber or a taxi and they have one of those smelly things from the thing, or the person next to me on the bus or something has fabric softener on their clothes, I mean, I can smell it from 15 paces, and that just sends my endocrine system. I'm not that sensitive, meaning I can get through life and smell bad things. It's just I don't want to, and I don't want to be around. I don't want to subject my system to that. I'm not a wimp. It's just when I smell it, I go, wow, that's so unfortunate that they're still producing those chemicals and people still smell them. So if you're concerned about your intuition or you want to improve it, get rid of your fabric softeners, get rid of your Febrezes. Anything unnatural that smells is going to block actually the endocrine system that's going to help you connect. And my practice is all about connecting to your intuition and disconnecting from the things that no longer serve you.
Beautiful. Scott, thank you very much for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love. It's been a total treat. You have a wonderful way with words, but it's your passion that's I think reaching people. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. I like these. I do what I am, is what I say. Once I figured out my intuition and that it was catered to healing, I am able to sort of gleefully say I do what I am. And I have to say, I just met you, but your energy is abounding, and just the energy coming off your chest is something to behold. So
well, I say to all compliments, you're a really good judge of character, and because you're Scott Clover and you're such a good judge of energy, it's like a triple compliment. So thank you. I just fired up as I said that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I can actually sense that there's like a fountain coming from your chest of I don't know, decency, or in a desire for decency is what I would say. So
well, thank you very much again,
bringing that to the world, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, total treat. Everybody, come on, check out Scott Clover, check out his show, and also do hit that like, subscribe, share, comment, the rest. You can do it. Nothing's stopping you. Have fun. And I'll add one thing myself. It's speculative, but I think you're going to be okay with this. Positivity is abundance. That's it. Scott, thank you again. Till next time.